Hey everyone, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and this morning Andy and I are starting off out in the garden harvesting some things so that I can make and can a homemade vegetable soup. We have so many things coming ripe in the garden right now that one way to preserve them quickly is to put them all together and make a wonderful soup that we can enjoy year-round. We have the majority of the ingredients in our garden, so we are picking peppers, tomatoes, beans, onions, corn, and all of these wonderful things that we have in abundance right now. As you see, everything is growing so nicely. We are really lucky this year to have such a great garden. So if you want to see how we make vegetable soup, stick around. I'm back inside and I've got everything laid out that I'm going to be chopping up for our vegetable soup that we are going to be making and canning today. This is a pressure canned soup, so you do need to have a pressure canner. So I've got everything laid out. Most things are from our garden. We didn't have carrots or celery, and the garlic is not from our garden. So everything else here is from our garden. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and chop and prepare everything so that you don't have to watch me do that. And then when I bring you back, I'll have everything chopped and prepared, and I'll give you the exact amounts and how I prepared each one as far as what size chunks and stuff. And then we'll assemble it and we'll can it. So stay right where you are. I'll be right back. Everything is now chopped and ready to be put together and heated up to go into our jars. Now, this is the most time-consuming part right here. It's just cutting up and cleaning and preparing your vegetables. After this, it's super easy. There's nothing to this recipe. It's just basically chopping up your vegetables, heating them up, and putting them into a jar. So I'm going to tell you how I chop things up as I put them into the pot. And I'm looking at all my ingredients and I'm thinking, I hope one pot is big enough. If not, I will just divide it in two and heat both of them and then just kind of mix them together as I scoop them into jars. So we'll see if they all fit in a pot. First thing, now I want to tell you that this recipe is based on a ball recipe from Home Preserving, the Complete Book of Home Preserving. It's a ball recipe. It's vegetable soup. So it's pretty much the same as what this is. I substituted just a couple of things, but using my knowledge of pressure canners and checking out processing times for all of the vegetables, I just made sure that I had enough processing time for every single vegetable. You can go to different extension offices with different universities. Just Google recommended processing times for vegetables with a pressure canner, and they'll a lot of times have charts and stuff like that. And I just found mine at our state college, Missouri University. And I looked through here to see which vegetable needed the longest time. And it looks to me like it is the corn, and it needs 85 minutes. And that's the one vegetable out of all of these that has the longest time. 85 minutes is the longest time. So I'll need to can this for 85 minutes. So after it comes to pressure and after we start timing. But you always look and see what your ingredients are, and then find the one that takes the longest, and you need to make sure that you time it at least that long. So the recipe that's in ball says 85 minutes, and that's because they have the corn in there. All right, so this recipe takes 8 cups of chopped cord and peeled tomatoes. I did not peel my tomatoes. It doesn't bother us to have the peels. When I chopped them, I used, let me grab it. When I chop my tomatoes, I use this little handy dandy chopper, and it's still dirty. I haven't washed it yet. It's still got the tomato stuff in it. And I used the small, and it's got tomatoes on it, but the small grit chopper. So my dices, you can see that, are very small. Okay. And so when they're diced that small, the skins are very tiny and they are finely chopped. So that's how I did it. That little chopper there, they have a whole bunch of different kinds. My son gave me one for Christmas, I believe, one year. My son Drew. And I use it all the time. I love it. So check those out if you're interested. So you need, it says, 8 cups of chopped, cored, peeled tomatoes. And as you see, this is an 8-cup measuring cup. I have done more because we're going to also add water to this. And I don't want to add quite as much water as they call for. So I'm using a few more tomatoes. It looks like I've got, this is 2 cups more, and that's probably another at least cup. So at least 3 cups more, maybe 4. So I'm going to add less water and more tomatoes, because what my idea is on this soup is to use it kind of as a base of more soup, since there's not going to be any meat in it. And this does not use any kind of chicken broth or beef broth or any kind of meat flavored broth. So I want it to be, if we want a chicken, like a chicken Mexican type soup, we can throw this in the pan, some chicken that's already been shredded or cut up, and I can season it with taco seasonings and whatever I want to add, maybe a little chicken broth to add to it too. So I plan on using this not necessarily as a easy soup to eat just out of the jar, but as a real good base for a soup. So I don't want to have quite as much water because I'll be adding that as I make my soup after I open the jar. So that being said, I've added those extra tomatoes here, and I will still add some water, but just not as much water. I'm using some of those tomatoes as the juice. So those are my 8 cups of chopped tomatoes. Then you need 8 cups of cubed peeled potatoes, and that's this right here. You need, you needed 6 cups of cubed potatoes. You need 6 cups of carrots, and these are just probably a half to a quarter inch thick. These were really big carrots, so I cut them in half lengthwise, and then I chopped them so they're like half circles. And so 6 cups of those, and I think I have extras in there since I just used what I had. Then you need 4 cups, it says, of lima beans. And lima beans would be great in here, but because we don't have any lima beans, I wanted to use our green beans. So I'm substituting lima beans for green beans, and I added a few extra. And when you snap your green beans, I'm used to snapping them bigger to make the canned green beans, but you want to make them smaller for the soup. So I think probably an inch and a half, 2 inches, that size would be appropriate for soup. We need 4 cups of fresh or frozen corn kernels, and this is just fresh off the cob, not cooked or anything. So we've got that, and again, 4 cups. This is the one that takes the longest to cook. Isn't that amazing? And we need 2 cups of celery. Oh, our pan's getting full. 2 cups of chopped celery, and I just split it down the middle lengthwise and then chopped it. We need 2 cups of chopped onions, and I use both red and white. We're going to split this pan. And I decided to add some peppers. So I've got about 2 cups of peppers. I added 1 jalapeno, so it won't make it very hot since we've got so much here. And it doesn't call for garlic, and I like some garlic. So this is probably a 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup, maybe a 1/3 cup. So this is going to go in the pot too. So I'm going to divide all of this up into 2 pots. I'll add my remaining peppers, my remaining garlic. I will add water to the amount that I feel is good. These will let off a lot of water when they're heating, so I'm not going to worry about that. And I'll just get it the consistency that I'd like it to be. Now, once it comes to a boil, we're going to just heat it for about 15 minutes. It says to cook for 15 minutes. Just keep an eye on it so it doesn't scorch. And then I will bring you back and we'll put it in jars. So see you in a minute. All right, I brought you right back because I thought I'm going to show you guys how I'm transferring these into the 2 pots, because it's kind of hard to get them mixed equally without having something else to mix them in. So I have a really big dish pan that I use a lot. And so I'm going to throw all the vegetables in there. I'm going to mix them up, and then I'm going to transfer them into each pot. That way they will all have the same ingredients in them. So just wanted to give you the hint that I was going to use in case you have the same issue. All right, I'll bring you back in a second. So everything's been added. I've mixed it all up. I'm just getting ready to put on the heat. It looks so pretty in there, all those colors. I added 2 cups of water to each pot. And I'm going to add a tablespoon of salt to each pot just to get started. And that will help pull out some of the liquid too. Okay, see you back here soon. The soup is just about ready. I've just got a couple more minutes for it to simmer. I've got my jars all cleaned and they're ready to go. They don't have to be sterilized. Your lids and your bands don't have to be sterilized. They're all going to be sterilized in the process. That is something that's new that the National Home Preservation has put out, that these all get sterilized. The studies that they've done, they all get sterilized, so you no longer have to pre-sterilize your jars. The only time you would need to pre-sterilize your jars is if you are water bath canning less than 10 minutes. If you are water bath canning for 10 minutes or more, you're fine. And of course, pressure canning, you're fine. All right, before our soup is placed in our jars, I want to give you a quick lesson on pressure canning. I know we've got lots of people who have not pressure canned before, and a lot of people are afraid of it. Don't be afraid of it. It's not, today with the equipment, it all has safety things. And as long as you have read the directions for your pressure canner and you are following the directions, there's no reason to be afraid of it. So first of all, your pressure canner, you need to inspect it and make sure that this is a rubber gasket. It is in good shape. And you can replace those for just, I don't know, $10, $15. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them at a hardware store. But just check and make sure it's not cracked, it's not brittle. Make sure it's in good shape. The second thing you want to do every time before you can is this vent right here. You want to make sure that there is nothing in there and that it is clear. And so you should be able to see light through it when you look through it. If not, take a pipe cleaner and clean it. Or if you have like a pin or something, like a needle, you can clean it with that too if that's all you had. The other thing you're going to have a safety valve here, and that should be easily moving up and down. And then your canner may also have the gauge. Some canners don't have the gauge. So just make sure everything's in good shape. This also has the safety plug, I guess is what we'll call it. And it's just a little rubber plug that if the pressure in this gets to be too high, that little rubber plug will just pop right out. And that's one of those safety things, like I said, that prevents an explosion or something like that that you've probably heard used to happen. But today's equipment is in good shape. Now, depending on what, and then you have your weight, and you need to figure out what your elevation is. We are under 1,000 feet, so I need to use 15 pounds. And so I have purchased, this one came with just a universal one that was heavier. It's probably 20 pounds or 25. And I couldn't rely on this. I had to watch my gauge. And it's kind of hard to babysit a canner for 85 minutes. So I purchased on Amazon a new weight that you can adjust to your altitude that fits this canner. Now you need to make sure you get the right model, because I have two Presto canners. They're several years apart, but one of them requires one kind of weight or one model number. The other requires another. They don't work interchangeably. I think their little vent things are a little bit of a different size. So be sure you get the right one. And it makes it so much nicer, because now when I put this on, once it gets to 10 pounds of pressure for my area, it will automatically vent. And I can hear if it gets to being too much, and I can adjust the heat and turn it down a little bit. But this always is going to have to be rattling in order to be at 10 pounds of pressure. Okay, so that is your weight. Now my canners are both Presto, and they both take 3 quarts of water. So when you put your water in, it's not going to go up to the top. It's only going to go down here. 3 quarts for mine is right about here. Your jars are not going to be covered in water like a water bath canner. They're going to be canned by the steam and pressure that's being pushed in on their jars, and causing that heat to be pushed into the fruits and vegetables that you are preserving. So you won't have as much water, which is nice, but you do need to have the required amount, because you certainly don't want your canner to run out, because that would be bad for your canner. It might mess your canner up so you can't use it anymore. And the stuff inside of it you might lose also. So make sure you have the right amount of water according to the directions of your canner. So what we're going to do, I am going to be canning outside, because I'm going to have 2 canners going, and I just don't want that in the house. It's summertime. It's already hot. We have air conditioning, but 2 big canners venting for 85 minutes is a lot. So I've got a gas stove outside, and I can take you outside when I get the jars in and get it going and show you. It's very nice to have. I showed you during our freezing corn video. We use that a lot. It has a higher power flame and gets things done really nicely. So I'm going to be taking it outside after I get my stuff in my jars. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 3 quarts of water in each canner. I'm going to take it outside. I'm going to start the flame so that they are getting warm, because you're going to have hot food here. So you're going to want to have hot water in your canner. Remember, hot, hot. If this were cold, you would want cold. You don't want your glass to break. So that's the first thing I will do. And then I'll come back and we'll start jarring up our soup. The soup's right here, and it looks really, really good. I don't know. Still got lots of colors. It will change as it cooks more on the in the canner, but it's tastes really good. The salt that I added was perfect. So, and I just added a big pinch of pepper to each pot, but I'm not putting any other spices in here. Again, I plan on spicing it and seasoning it and adding other stuff when I use it. So we're just going with it very basic. So what you need to be careful with when you are filling your cans is making sure that you're giving your jars equal amount of the liquid and equal amount of the vegetables. Otherwise, you'll end up with jars that have lots of juice, very few vegetables, or lots of vegetables and very little juice. So I usually go around and kind of put a couple spoonfuls in each one, try to get some big chunky stuff first, and then a little juice, and kind of go halfway with it, and then I'll disperse it the rest of the way. Now, again, you don't have to have your jars and your lids sterilized. These are just cleaned in hot soapy water, and they are good. You might have to keep one of these jars out and have soup today, even though it's summertime, but it sure does look good. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill these jars, and then I'll come back when we've got them all done. I filled all of my jars, and I think I had 2 tablespoons of juice left, so I've never had it come that close before. Now, the original recipe calls for 7 quarts. Because I've adjusted mine a little bit, I made 9 quarts. The next thing you need to do after you have your liquid in your jars is to take a skewer or a debubbler and just go around the jar to make sure there's no air bubbles. Sometimes when you have large chunks of things in a jar, an air bubble can get down in there, and this way it'll get out and it'll be safely canned. And you can just go along the sides and then toward the middle. And there's quite a bit of liquid in this, so I'm not too worried about having air bubbles. Now, I had added garlic, which wasn't in the recipe, and it tastes really good in there. But you need to like garlic. If you don't like garlic, don't put it in. Okay. Now, after we have them debubbled, I have a 1-inch headspace, and 1 inch is basically to the bottom of that bottom ring. It's kind of, there's a ring at the very bottom, that's 1 inch. So I've got all of them at 1 inch headspace. And then I've got some white vinegar right here in this little cup, and I am going around and wiping my rims really good, because you don't want any food on those rims. If you have something on those rims, your jar won't seal. So be sure you get those nice and clean. Also, while you are wiping the rim, your finger can be feeling to see if there's any rough edges or any nicks. If there is a nick in your jar lip, you will need to replace that jar, because that one will not seal. That will allow air in where that nick is. So that will need to be repurposed to another kind of jar, maybe for dry storage. Sometimes you can just barely feel it. You can't see it, but you can barely feel it. And they're perfectly good jars still, except there's that little tiny bump on your rim. And if you get your paper towel dirty, just fold it so that you can use the clean side. And I'm just making sure. Okay, I think those look good. So we're now going to put our lids on. And I always just kind of look at them to make sure they have the seals look good. I have had seals that were messed up before, and I think they were ball canning lids, and they just didn't have the plastic or the rubber going all around. There was a little spot where it missed, so always check those. There we go. So now we're putting our rings on, and with your ring you just want to do fingertip tight. Don't wrench down on it, but you do need it tight with your fingertips. We need to have the lid firmly close to the jar. That way it will seal. If you do it too tightly, what will happen is you can't get any air to escape, and it will warp your lid and possibly break your jar trying to get the air out. And if you find that your lid doesn't feel like it's going on right, get another one. If they're bent or rusty and they don't go on the jar very well, try another one. I wish there were something really cool we could do with these jar rings, because I've got a ton of them. I guess just recycle. All right, so let me see here. All right, they all have their lids. They all look good. Now I am going to put them in a metal basket and take them outside, and then I'll take you with me. I just put them in the hot canners. I'm putting 5 in one and 4 in the other. These hold 7 quarts. Just give you a better look at the jar close up. Really pretty. All those vegetables in there. So right now everything's hot, but we've got to put our lids on. So I'm going to see if I can do this with one hand. So I've got to make sure I get the right lid on the right pot. All right, let's see if I've got it. I think I need to go the other way. There we go. So you lay it on there, and I've lost the little sticker that used to be right here that would tell you that that needed to line up. This is my old one. So then you slide it and it'll lock in. You can still open it, but you slide it all the way. And I'm going to turn this one really carefully so that I can see the gauge from this side. And then I want to center it on the flame. Okay, there's that one. Now right now I've just got my flame on medium, just low. So it's hot, but not real hot. The air is cooling it off a little bit. So then we're going to put this lid on, and so this one has the little arrow, and there's the little arrow right there. So we are just going to line up our arrows. And let me scoot it over so the other one's not in the way. And when you line up your arrow, you are able, that one's kind of tight, you are able to seal it just like that. So these are both locked into position. I'm going to turn this one too. I'm going to put the camera down to do that though. Okay, so I've got both of them with the gauges facing me. I'm going to pull up the heat now to between medium and high. These are pretty high flames, so I don't want to overdo it. But what we're going to do is we are going to bring this to a boil, and then as soon as it starts boiling, you're going to see air coming through our vents. And once that air is streaming nicely, we're going to time for 10 minutes. And then at 10 minutes, we are going to put our weights on, and we will let this gauge get to 10 pounds. And once it gets to 10 pounds, we will start timing. I always turn it down a little bit too, because once it hits that 10-pound pressure point, it just needs a low heat to maintain it. So these are starting to go now. You can hear them rumbling in there a little bit. So I will bring you back when we put the weight on. Okay, this is what it looks like when it's venting. It's coming out pretty powerful. I think you can see it, you can hear it. And so it is venting, and this one is just starting. So I'm going to start my timer for 10 minutes now, and we are going to vent those for 10 minutes. And I'm going to keep it up at a pretty high heat so that it vents nicely. So just trying to get it all vented out there. Once 10 minutes is up, we'll come back and we'll put the weight on. It's been 10 minutes. So now I'm going to put our weights on, and we're going to put this one here. And a lot of people are afraid to do this. Just have your fingers ready. It's not a problem. So we put the weights on. Now we're going to watch it. You'll start seeing this gauge building pressure, and it'll start going up. Once it gets to 10 pounds, this weight will start to rattle, and it releases air. And when that releases air, it brings it back down. So it'll maintain about 10 pounds of pressure on that gauge. Okay, we've got both of them at 10 pounds of pressure. And so I'm counting down now for 85 minutes. I'll set my timer for 85 minutes, and when 85 minutes is up, we'll come back. 85 minutes has passed, and now I'm turning off my heat. And I've got a helper here. What you doing? Yeah? You talking to me? Are you being a stinker? So the heat's turned off. We are just letting the pressure go down to zero. When the pressure is down to zero, I will be back and we will open these up. They are both at zero pressure. And so what we're going to do is we are going to take off our, and they've been setting for a while, so take those off. And my husband's doing some chainsawing, so that's what you're hearing there. So we're going to open this up. Turn it. I'm doing this one-handed, so let me change hands here. There we go. Now I'm just going to tilt the lid just a little bit and let some of the heat come out, and then I'm going to let it set for 10 minutes. And I'll do the same on this one, and then we'll take the jars out and I'll show you what they look like. All right, we've given them 10 minutes to acclimate, so we're going to take them out of the canners. And I tell you what, it does smell really good out here right now. It kind of smells like an Italian restaurant or something with that garlic. All right, so let me open this up real carefully. And let's look inside there. Looks like we did have some siphoning. I think all the jars are going to can though, because it looks like they're all still bubbling inside, and that's usually a good sign for a seal. Boy, that looks pretty. So I am going to take all of these out and put them in this basket. Let's go ahead and see how this one did. And we had some siphoning in this one too. That one right there siphoned a lot. It'll be okay though. It's still canned. It looks like it's still bubbling in there. So I'll get these out and take them in, and we'll take a look at them. There they are. They look really good. We did have a little bit of siphoning. It's hard to tell right now how much the liquid's going to drop. But the ones that siphoned, these three right here, 1, 2, and 3, they look like they're going to seal just fine because they're still bubbling, so there's some pressure in there. But they look really good. The siphoning won't affect, it'll still store just fine. It just won't have the liquid in there that you would normally have, so more liquid will be needed. So, great recipe. Smells wonderful. Can't wait to give it a try. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing. Also, comment if you have any questions, and like and share. I would really appreciate that.